My name is Nathan Callison, and I work for a company called Pathway Services. And so as you can see in that picture, we have vehicles. And what we do is we go and we collect data for typically state DOTs. Like they'll pay us to go drive, 20,000 miles worth of road or however many miles worth of road that they want, and collect data. And we have lasers and accelerometers that kind of read the surface of the pavement, and we have cameras that take pictures kind of out the front. If you kind of think of like Google roads and stuff like that, except we're much more sophisticated, because we have the lasers and accelerometer, and we kind of read the pavement surface, and we're able to give that back to the state DOTs so that they can make assessments on which roads they need to fix, when and where, and the time frame that they do. Our company is a little over 25 years old. We're headquartered in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We do have satellite offices in Central America, and we have over 200 employees. And as the data types evolve and expand and we add more data types, like LiDAR is one that we've added over the past couple of years. The challenge that we start to run into is how do we house all this data, And so kind of the history is our company was founded, our founder, our president and CEO, he started the company in his garage. He built that first vehicle in his garage, and collected the first, set of roadways by himself, basically, and wrote the software and everything. And so we've been a company that's always kind of built things from the ground up. And so, we started with, we'd have a workstation that was designated for a particular project, and it just had a handful of just individual drives in it. And so data would be put on that. And then over time, we went from that to, we bought a chassis that could hold like 24 drives, and we put a RAID card and, attach them all together and have a big RAID so we could have a bigger drive. And then, just as the data keeps growing and getting bigger and more intense, and the more projects we have, came to the decision we needed to, okay, how are we going to go forward with this? Because this is not really sustainable. And so we decided to look into vendor solutions. And so I did some research and kind of narrowed it down to two. We were looking at EMC and we were looking at DataON. It was kind of the two finalists that we were kind of looking at. We went with DataON because we were already kind of a Microsoft shop. So like all our servers and everything were all Windows, and there's a familiarity there. But also the cost, and so their cost was in between us building our own stuff and, like EMC, which is now Dell EMC. And so we went with that method. And so we started back with 2012, kind of when storage spaces was coming on. And so we started with that, and we've had a handful of different configurations that we've worked with DataON since. We started with a cluster in a box where it was 2 nodes and a bunch of drives inside the same chassis. Then we switched to separate servers as being the nodes with the JBODs attached, so we went to a 2 node with 4 JBODs. And then 2 years ago, we switched to the S2D on server 2019, where we have 4 nodes and 4 JBODs. And so we're now adding at least 500 terabytes a year of data. And so we are over, 3 petabytes worth of data now. And so moving to the S2D clusters and stuff like that has been very beneficial for us and very efficient. And so one of the things that we added this past year is we had to figure out how to get people to be able to work remotely and be efficiently, because like we have the office in Costa Rica, we would get the data from our vehicles and we would do some processing, and then we would send it to the Costa Rica office so that they could do their part. And, that was taking weeks. And so we bought a 3-node HCI cluster to run VDI on. and so we were able to turn that, multiple weeks into like 2 to 3 days that the people in Costa Rica could be viewing the same data. And so that was a big benefit for us. And then it was also, it got sped up because of COVID-19, and we had a lot of people in our office had to work remotely too. And so it kind of helped speed that up. And so like the solution was the Azure Stack HCI 3-node cluster, as you can see in this picture. It was, as Cosmos kind of said, we bought it, we plugged it in, plugged the cables in, and we were kind of up and running kind of the same day. So there wasn't a lot of configuration. There wasn't a lot of management, that we had to deal with. And so that was a great investment on our parts. And so I don't think we're going back to any old methods anytime soon. So, and so in closing with my part, if I were to share 2 things that would be most beneficial for anybody who's just starting this, is one, no PowerShell. Back in 2012 when we started using storage spaces and, having to use PowerShell commands, I wasn't that familiar with PowerShell. And so that was kind of a learning curve. And so that is definitely learn PowerShell. And the other is to embrace Windows Admin Center. And I've been watching it evolve over these past couple of years, and it's turning into quite an amazing tool. And so anyway, in the closing, that's my story for Pathway Services.
Hey, thank you, Nathan. I'll take the slide back a little bit. I think this is a great example. Believe it or not, your journey, the Microsoft journey you took, is really the same journey that DataON's been on for the last 10 years. Your journey is longer than Cosmos. Cosmos started his journey as HCI, I believe, when 2016. Your journey started as Azure Storage. And you really took on this entire Microsoft journey of software-defined storage, from a shared storage, JBOD, capacity drive, replacing a SAN, to moving yours to share nothing S2D, to now leveraging the capability of Windows Server 19 Azure Stack HCI to run your VDI clusters. And I think your story actually is very similar to many of our customers across the spectrum, where they're a medium-sized company, they're looking for technology that they could believe and trust, like Microsoft, but also scale based on the workload you need. You have VDI workload, you have storage file share workloads, you have other workloads that you're using to ensure that you can run your business efficiently. I guess I have a question for you before I go to my slide is, as you've been on this journey, nothing is perfect. What are some of the challenges you face? I know rebuild was something that you had to spend a lot of time. Is there something you want to really tell Microsoft they need to do better to make sure that their solution can continue to innovate? Any thoughts there?
The initial one is just you kind of alluded to it, is kind of the rebuilding time. And it sounds like they're kind of working on that stuff already. But I'm excited to hopefully get to see that in person someday soon, because the rebuild times are quite slow.
Cosmos, any thoughts there? Because he has petabytes, 500 terabytes of storage. He's adding 500 terabytes a year and rebuilding. How are you guys going to help Nathan and many companies like his to continue to make that pain go away?
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear that firsthand. So there's 2 improvements that I think you can be excited for. The first one is actually already part of the latest release of Azure Stack HCI. And so in Azure Stack HCI version 20H2, storage repairs are about 4 to 5 times faster with a typical update scenario. So that's a very significant change. In our testing, the time to rebuild a server after applying a monthly update went from about 45 minutes to about 9 minutes. The way that we did that is there's a new engine that actually handles the repair inside of storage bases. It runs what we call a granular bitmap of the data that's actually changed while the node was down. Previously, the changes were tracked using a relatively large chunk of about a gigabyte. That is now a 256 kilobyte chunk. So it's a much finer grained tracking of what information actually needs to be repaired and resynced. And as a result, it's about 4 to 5 times faster in our testing. That's actually just the first thing, though. The second thing is we are also introducing a user adjustable control where you can determine if you want the repair to go faster or slower. Going faster, of course, consumes more bandwidth, right? But if you have network bandwidth and storage bandwidth to spare and you'd actually just like it to end sooner, you can dial it up and then you can dial it back down again. That's not something that's in the current version. It's something that's coming in the release later this year. But because Azure Stack HCI is an always up-to-date service, you'll be getting that feature as a subscriber.